kind of stuck behind the podium today because we didn't realize it till we got here, but our battery for the other mic is dead, so I can't move around. So I think where I got the idea for this title, "When One Door Closes," is pretty obvious, huh? So I want to start with a quote from Ernest Holmes, who wrote, "There is a sublime and divine hope for everyone who is willing to surrender himself to the divine good." So I thought this week, how often when we come to the end of a chapter in our life, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job maybe that we really love that goes away or we retire from, a move, a graduation, how often when something like that happens, we look back and bang on the door that's closing. We right? I mean, we all, I'm sure, have done it at some times, because looking ahead might not be really comfortable. We're going someplace where perhaps we've never been before. We're attached to what was and what's comfortable. And so what we often need to do is to push ourselves to see a bigger picture, to change our consciousness. You know, like Holmes said in the quote I just read, to surrender to the divine good. And I think what he's really meaning there is that Spirit only wants good for us. And so if we can bring ourselves, when we face different things in life, to just surrender and know that whatever, no matter what the appearance is, that there's good in there, because that's what Spirit wants for us, and that the only thing that stands in the way of greater possibilities for you and for me is you and me. That's the only thing that stops us from having greater possibilities in our life. And I was reading something by a brother named David Steidl Rast this week, and he said, trusting life is a stance we take. He used the word stance. Probably in New Thought we would say choice, but it really is the same thing. He's saying that's a stance that we take when we decide to trust life. And to do it takes courage. It takes courage to do that. And having courage doesn't mean we might not be afraid. It doesn't mean that there won't be some fear in there. He said, but we can always make the decision to trust life. We can always say yes to life, and stay open for more surprises. So Becky gets a magazine called More, M-O-R-E, and she showed me an article there this week that I want to share with you. It's by a lady named Elizabeth McCracken. And in the article she says that she married really late in life, and she had her first pregnancy at 38. And she carried the baby for 9 months, and then it was stillborn. And, you know, obviously it was a very painful time for her. And she said what it led to was a fear of getting pregnant again. First, you know, she was older and given the first outcome. And she's wrestled with it for quite a while. And then she said she made the decision. She said, I decided that I can stand on a cliff immobile and feeling terrified, or I can leap and feel the terror while I'm falling. So she decided to leap and feel the terror while she was falling, and she had 2 more successful pregnancies. She has two children. And what she said, I thought this was really profound. What she said that she learned by doing this is that sometimes the shadows cast by the thing that you fear are more frightening than the thing itself. Sometimes, so she's saying sometimes worrying about something is more frightening than doing the thing itself. And I thought to myself, this was before I was born, but it's like the speech that FDR gave when he said there's nothing to fear but fear itself. And that's, I think, what she was saying. And then she talked about a conversation she had with her daughter. And I learned something this morning. Did you all know that the dodo was a real bird? I always thought the dodo bird was like a fake thing, but it was a real bird. Well, actually, I knew I was going to tell this story. And I said to Becky today, was the dodo bird a real bird or a myth? And she said a myth. And I thought, I might need to look that up. So I looked it up, and it actually was. And what she said, she had a conversation with her 5-year-old daughter about the dodo bird. And the little girl was kind of sad that the dodos were extinct. And she talks about this in the article, and she said it was only on one island, and there were no predators on that island. The dodo bird had no predators. So when sailors found this island, they didn't run. And as she put it, they were eaten into history. And she said the dodo was fearless, and now it's extinct. And she said, as for me, I fear and I persevere. And so I think what she's saying, sometimes fear can keep us out of trouble, but also there are times when we can walk through it, when we can make that choice to walk through it. And how often do we get an idea how life should be? I was reading something by a lady named Madison Taylor, and she said, we get these ideas, this is how my life should be. And when it doesn't happen, we get stuck on the idea of the way we think life should be. And so we cling to how it should be. And she said, life isn't always predictable. And curveballs can be a gift. They can bring us wonderful surprises. And when I read that, I thought about us. I mean, look at us. We moved into this space a couple of years ago, and we spent a heck of a lot of time and energy decorating it and getting it to the way we wanted. And now we're faced with moving again. And so we started a moving committee, and we were doing all of this work. And all of the time, nobody really, at least nobody that said anything to me, really wanted to move. In fact, the first time the moving committee met, we went around and talked, and the first thing everybody said was, I don't want to move. And look what happened. We wind up having lunch with somebody who says, why don't you come share my space? And it's going to turn out to be a really great thing and some wonderful new vistas for us. So you just never know when you're willing to surrender. I love Billy Joel, and he's got a song that's titled Keeping the Faith. And one of the lines from the song is, the good old days weren't always good, tomorrow ain't as bad as it seems. Tama Kieves is a writer that I really enjoy reading. And in her latest book, she said, most of us want chia pet success. Those chia pets? She said, we want chia pet success. Put a little water on us and we grow. And she said, that's not how it happens. I mean, we all know that. That's not the way life works. And she said, inspired success, it's more like a pilgrimage or a sacred marriage. She said, it's where you commit to go through all the trials and all the tribulation. She said, it's about devotion, knowing that you're going to give it all that you have, and you take the long view and relax and give your dreams the time you need. She said, I have to be willing to accept the outcome I don't want if I'm at peace with the unacceptable outcome. I'm free. Think about that. Now, so, in terms of the door closing, when that door closes, if we keep looking back, we're really not free. We're attached to what was in our life. And what she's saying is, if we can accept whatever life is showing us, then we're free. We're free to see new possibilities. We're free to see new ways of being. We're open to new ways of living, and that's what that freedom was about. So I know most of you that have taken classes from us have heard the story of how Becky and I found religious science, but I'm just going to briefly tell you again. In 1987, I was living in Maine and got divorced, and I moved to LA. Well, I moved to Southern California, and I worked in LA. And the first day I was on my job, or the first week, I met a fellow who was the consultant to the consultants. And after we talked for a while, he looked at me and he said, "There's this woman in Huntington Beach. I think you really enjoy her. You have to go hear her." And he was talking about a minister named Peggy Bassett. And I had custody of my kids. And I used to tell him all the time, yeah, I'm going to do that. Of course, I knew I never would do it because it was hard enough to wake them up 5 days a week to go to school, much less on a Sunday to go to church. So I never did it. And about 3 years later, Beck and I met. And we were talking about what was missing in our life. And we both said spirituality. So I mentioned that I had heard about this church, and we went, and that's how we found it. And then just to tell you the end of the story, years later, when I'm in the School of Ministry, I'm going to speak at a town where my friend, his name is Gene, where he lives. So I call him up and say, "You and Barbara have to come listen to me." They come, and he walks in, and he looks around, and he says, "Wow, that's cool. I've never been in a church of religious science before." And I looked at him, and I said, what do you mean? I'm here because of you. You're the one, Peggy Bassett, remember? And he said, "Oh, yeah, Ron." He said, "I had only heard of her. I never really heard of her. It changed my whole life." So I tell you that story because talking about a door closing, this week I got an email from him saying, we're still really good buddies, that his wife has cancer and her oncologist gave her 2 months to live. And so Becky and I called him yesterday, and you know, when you think about a door closing, that's the ultimate door. And he's a very spiritual person, they both are. And we had this long conversation, and I said to him, "How are you doing?" And he said, "You know, Ron, nobody says life is fair. Nobody says that." And he said, "You have to take what life gives you." Everything I'm talking about, he said, "You have to take what life gives you. So I don't want this lesson, but I accept it. I'm not going to go into denial. Barbara and I, we're going to accept it, and where it leads, it leads, and where we go, we go. But that's all part of life." And you know, that's what really this message today is all about. I read something by Rabbi Harold Kushner this week, and he said, "You know, I spend a lot of time comforting people who have lost jobs that they absolutely love." He said, "I've spent a lot of time with middle-aged women whose husbands came home and said, found somebody younger." He said, "I've spent time with parents whose children were killed by drunk drivers senselessly." And he said, "You know, the thing that astonishes me is the resilience that people have." He said, "Here are these people that have the deepest hurts." And he said, they don't deny the reality of what's happened. But there's a part of them that understands that pain and rejection are part of life. And when they can see that, they can also see how much of life is good and make the decision that they want more. Make the decision that they want more of life. And just this morning, I went on the computer and I saw this quote by a fellow named Steve Maraboli, and he said, "Incredible change happens in your life when you decide to take control of what you do have power over instead of craving control over what you don't." A lot of wisdom in that. So I read this week that Alexander Solzhenitsyn, when he wrote later in life about his experiences in the Soviet prison camp, you know what he wrote about them? He bless them. He wrote, bless them. And when Lama Surya Das speaks about another Lama that he knows who was thrown in a Chinese prisoner of war camp. And he said it was on the side of a hill, and they were tortured. They were freezing. They were hungry, and they didn't know if they were going to live. And he tells his friends he looks at those as some of the best years of his life. Imagine that. And the reason that they both did that is because there's a place within you that pain and loss can force us to look inwardly and to see more clearly who we are, to see our own inner wisdom and our nature. I thought this was amazing. The Lama that I just spoke about, he had all of this time to meditate and to do his devotions. And one night when he was asleep, his mentor came to him in a dream and said, here's the way to escape where you are. And the next day, he and a group of people followed what he saw in his dream, and that's how they escaped. You know, we get to see, it pushes us, if we allow it to, it pushes us to see our own inner wisdom and our own divine nature. And if we can see it in ourselves, we can see it in other people. And what happens is, instead of closing doors to us, or when doors do close, instead of closing opportunities to us, these opportunities can become stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks to our own enlightenment. And you know, last week when Jerry and Charlotte, before they went away, were here, I said that when Beck and I were visiting them in North Carolina, I saw this sign on a billboard, and it said, even a shoe can change your life, Cinderella. And I was going to do a whole talk on it and decided it wasn't a big enough topic for a talk, but the idea is that even a small change can sometimes produce great results for us. And I was reading this week a book titled Callings by Greg Lavoie, and he said that at one point he was in an improv group, and he and a woman got called up, and they were each given one word to say, please and no. One of them said please, the other said no, and that was all they did. And he said he was absolutely astonished at the number of ways they were able to express such a limited theme. And he said what that taught him is that sometimes limitation can impede us, but lots of times limitation can be a path to growth. He said, look how often when somebody loses one of their five senses, the others are heightened. You know, you ever meet somebody who lost their sight, but they have great hearing? And he said, you know, when you can't buy a solution, very often we invent one. He said, criticism can teach you to rely on your intuition. Sometimes when you work in a job that you absolutely hate, you can use that to pay for your college, to get out of that job later on in life. Christian Larson was a contemporary of Holmes, and he once wrote, every door that may close on the left will open another door on the right, through which we may pass to a greater world than we ever knew before. So I saw something this week in the Gospel of Thomas. You know, it's one of the Gospels that didn't make it into the Bible. But some people think it actually is the truest depiction of Jesus of all of them. And so in this Gospel of Thomas, the disciples say to Jesus, when will the kingdom of heaven come? And this is his response to them. He says, the kingdom of heaven will not come by expectation. Behold, the kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the earth, but men do not see it. So he's saying the kingdom of heaven is here right now, and in our ignorance, we don't see it. And the kingdom of heaven is the possibility for each of our lives right here and right now. And so if we ask ourselves, well, if that's true, when is the good going to come? The good's going to come when we change our consciousness. The good is going to come when we start to believe in the good, as Ernest Holmes said in the quote that I opened up with. When we can step up and let go of the past, let go of the clinging, when we can learn what the present has to teach us right here and right now. Because when we cling, we lose the blessings of the moment. And so if you think about it, when we're in the hallway, when the one door closes and before the other door opens, when we're in that hallway, we've left our history, but we probably haven't claimed our destiny. What we've done is graduated from one period, and we're standing by, waiting for another one to open up. So I wanted to, this is a warning, this is a tearjerker story. So I'm reading this book called Visions, Trips, and Crowded Rooms by David Kessler. And David Kessler is a person who writes about death and dying. He worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And this book, Visions, Trips, and Crowded Rooms, is stories about that he has gotten from doctors and therapists about people's last day or last days on earth. And so lots of people have visions. Some of them talk about taking trips, and some of them talk about being in a crowded room. So one of the stories, I'm going to go through the whole story, and then I'll tell you why I shared it. It's titled The Kiss. And this woman is a nurse and a lawyer who is writing it. She's in hospital administration. And she tells the story of when she was a young woman in her 30s, she thought life was really wonderful. She had this great job, couple of children. Her husband was a realtor, and it was really cool because he could work his schedule around and be home with the kids. And everything was going great. And then one day he comes home and he says, you know, I love somebody else. I want a divorce. So they get divorced, and she's really thrown for a loop. And then she figures out, oh, she was making more money than him, so she doesn't get any support. So she's really having a struggle. And when the kids were 8 or 9, she said, she wondered if she would ever find love again. And then she goes to a yoga class, and she meets somebody. And she said, from our first kiss, I knew we were meant to be, and so did he. It was like no other kiss I'd ever had. If this was love, I was sure feeling it deeply. And this guy adored her and her kids. And the kids grow up, they go off to college, and to make a long story short, he gets debilitating cancer, goes through years of therapy, and the kids come home one year on December 22nd, which is our wedding anniversary. They come home and she takes them to see their stepdad in the hospital, and the doctors come in, and the doctors tell her, you know, there's really no hope. Why don't you just take him home? So she writes that they take him home, and that, I'm sorry, I lost my place. They take him home, and she said it was the most special Christmas ever. No gifts, only love. She said, what do you give a dying person as a present? What do you give a wife or a child that's losing a husband and a dad? So she said, we had no expectations, and we just decided to focus on the magic of the season and just being together. So I want to go to the end of the story and then come back. So what happens, she walks into his room one day, and he's having a conversation with his mother. And he's telling his mother all about her and the kids. And it doesn't matter to him that other people are there, because he sees his mother at the foot of his bed and on the ceiling. And then she wrote, on the last day of his life, he talks to his mom again. And then he looked at me and he said, come here. And he gave me the most passionate kiss, the kind when you're dating, not when you're dying. And afterward, he told his mother, I loved her from the first kiss. And he turned to her and he said, and to the last kiss, I love you. And then he died. I share it because here was this absolute door that was closing. But if you go back and listen to what she said about Christmas, it was the most special Christmas ever. No gifts, only love. We had no expectations and decided to focus on the magic of the season and just being together. That is a choice. That's a choice. I mean, they could have gnashed their teeth and cried about how unfair life was, but they made the choice to live their time together the best way that they could, building memories and sharing it in love. And that's a choice all of us get to make whenever we see a door closing in our life. So I want to close with something from Michael Beckwith in the book Spiritual Liberation. Every chapter in this book, Michael ends with what he calls an embodiment. It's kind of like a prayer, and I just thought this one was really beautiful, so I want to share it. He wrote, no longer do I struggle against uncomfortable circumstances, feelings, and experiences in which I cannot see an immediate way out. I listen to their message and receive their gifts. When all seems dark, I know that I am in a development process that is guided and lighted by the Spirit within. I go forward in confidence and trust. I respond to the inner call of my spirit to go deeper within, to allow its transforming touch to reveal my wholeness. Something new is being born within me, and I yield to it. Meditation may be difficult, and my prayers seem dry, and even this I surrender. The Spirit within me knows what it is doing with my life. Darkness and light are the same. Both give birth to my awakening. I am willing to become more myself through this process. My inner perception shifts, and I welcome this experience. I embrace it. These words that I speak are my declaration of rebirth. It is active within me now, and something magnificent is happening. Something rich is happening. With complete assurance, I know that the Spirit is for me and not against me, that life is for me and not against me. I am a child of the universe, here to learn, to walk in love of God amidst the crash of breaking worlds. I say, this shall not move me, and it does not. I am divinely supported, and all things work for my good. So it is.
So it is.
So thank you for being here. God bless you, and have a wonderful week.
Thank you.